the ears, the skin, the eye, the tongue, the nose. Each of these organs translate the stimuli, like the touch, the sound, the light, etc., into ionic signals, which are then sent to the brain. Therefore, these information are processed before they are part of my consciousness. If that's true, then the perception that I have of the material world is not a direct one. It's not a direct experience, but a mediated experience. And by definition, if it is mediated, then it can be distorted or even illusory. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. So in chapter 4, section 2, the ages of rationality, experiencing the divine. In this section, I argue that our sentience might be the most direct way to experience the divine. So previously I've described how we experience the world, the material world, through our senses, hearing, touch, sight, taste, smell, which are mediated through organs, the ears, the skin, the eye, the tongue, the nose. Each of these organs translate the stimuli, like the touch, the sound, the light, etc., into ionic signals, which are then sent to the brain. And if I consider the brain the material support for my consciousness, I deduce that all the information that I received from these organs are biased, since the stimuli are processed and transmitted before being integrated by the brain. Therefore, these information are processed before they are part of my consciousness. If that's true, then the perception that I have of the material world is not a direct one. It's not a direct experience, but a mediated experience. And by definition, if it is mediated, then it can be distorted or even illusory. To give an example, I mentioned I'm a spectroscopist. I deal with lasers. In that laser community, it was quite common to have retinal damages. When the laser hit your eye, these are powerful lasers. They'll burn the retina instantaneously. So I have a few of my colleagues that have such damages, and they told me their experiences. And one in particular told me that immediately after, he could see a hole in his vision. Like you take a white piece of paper, you look at it, and you see a dark spot. But after a while, funnily enough, the brain adapts. In theory, the retina does not repair itself. Although I have another instance where the guy assures that his retina was repaired, regardless. It might be an exception. Typically, it doesn't. If you burn a hole, you stick with that hole for life. But the brain adapts, and it starts pulling out colors from the surrounding senses to create a color that fills the gap, the hole. So for example, if you have that hole in the vision, you look at a forest, a lush forest. That hole will not stay black. It will become green, like the surrounding. If you start reading a book, black writing on white paper, that hole will look gray, because it's a mixture between the surrounding black and white colors. It's really interesting how the brain adapts. But what is interesting here, what is most interesting here, is that the portion of your retina that was damaged does not send any more signals. So you shouldn't see any colors. But the brain compensates and creates colors where there's none. That's an illusion that the brains create. So this phenomenon is called neural adaptation and shows that my physical senses can be deceived according to my needs, whether these needs are conscious or not. To illustrate further this point of false consciousness, It might be a trivial example, but it's one that I myself lived. So I remember playing with my son and looking for a small wooden stick to fix the toy. It was a broken toy. The wheel broke off. I needed a new axle. So I was looking for a small piece of wood to fit the wheel in. I looked in his toy box, and I find another piece of wood which looked like a Chinese chopstick. So I was like, okay, let me take this. I can just cut it out, curve it to the proper size. I take it and I start curving, and to make sure that it fits the wheel, I put it in the wheel, I curve it a bit more, I try again, I curve it a bit more, until I achieve the right shape and dimension, and then I cut out the piece entirely, and I fix the toy. And I let the remaining of that chopstick on the floor. And that's where I realized that it was not a chopstick, it was a paintbrush. So what I was holding in my hand were actually the metal piece and the brush that was touching my skin. But because I was so focused on the other hand, the wooden tip, that my brain somehow negated, dismissed the feeling of the cold metal and the fluffy brush. I didn't realize it was a paintbrush. I wouldn't have curved a paintbrush. But it's funny that it's only after I had finished fixing the toy that I realized that I have curved the handle of a paintbrush. It might seem, again, trivial, but during the whole process, I was persuaded to hold a simple wooden stick. And somehow, my mind was oblivious to the actual object I had at hand. My mind somehow had suppressed this stimuli. So beyond our senses, another way to perceive the world is through emotions, which are like joy, love, fear. These are felt in specific situations. So these feelings, unlike the five physical senses, do not require the intermediation of an organ other than the nervous system itself. They can certainly be triggered by signal from one's organ, like feeling of joy when seeing something pleasing, for example. But they are not constrained by it or solely dependent on it. For example, remembering that sight can make you feel happy again. The other way around, when you look repetitively at the same pleasing sight, it might not result each time in the same sense of joy. You might get bored of it after a while. Therefore, consider these feelings as the most direct and authentic experience that I can have of the world, because they require a minimum of physical intermediaries. Accordingly, emotions could be the most direct way to experience the divine while living in this material world. I would also argue that our ability to listen to our feelings, like any other physical senses, can be developed through training and practices. That's where I'm willing to use scientific method and apply it to spirituality, to train and practice my sentience. Scientists today are trying to explain and rationalize emotions by talking about hormones and other neurotransmitters, sure. Although we are capable of chemically manipulate emotions via, for example, antidepressant or other drugs, the generations of an emotion remains unexplained from a purely material point of view. Like, we don't know how to explain imaginations, emotions, just talking about neurotransmitters. We can't at the moment. So these feelings are not palpable at the moment. We cannot measure them. That's why they are beyond scientific reach. And thus cannot be scanned, measured objectively. So here, in discussing about emotions, I'm flirting with another limit of the current sciences. Rationality of scientific reasoning is curtailed by a wall made out of all the unanswered questions, like what are emotions, what is consciousness, why this world, what is my purpose. That scientific reasoning can only take me up to that wall, but it is revelation, prophecy, that allows me to climb over the wall, to find answers, by guiding my intuition towards a religious interpretation of the world. And after comforting my faith using scientific reasoning, I'm now turning towards my emotions and perceptions of the world, which seems to be the most direct ways to experience this world and to dare to experience the divine. وجزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.